Hello, I'm Mike Fish, broker for Minnesota Real Estate and Management, and today I'm excited about this video. I know I say that a lot, but this is going to be a good one. We're going to answer probably the number one question that lake home buyers have in the area, and if it's not their number one question, it probably should be if they're not super familiar with the area. So a lot of our buyers are either from the cities or out of state and don't know the Brainerd Lakes area super well. And the biggest question we have, and I think it's more important than it used to be, is which lakes should bring the highest price, which lakes traditionally have the highest value, what are the safe bets, if the market gets soft. And this is really important, and I hope I don't offend anybody here, but over the last 2-3 years, because of our market, there's been two kind of shifts we've seen. Now, one is people are getting pushed off kind of the bigger, more popular lakes because of price and pushed onto the smaller lakes. And that's a good thing. Like, I'm going to talk about the top 15 to 20 lakes, and I'll mention kind of some of my favorites because there are some lakes that maybe traditionally people don't see or think about that I absolutely love, and we'll talk about that. But that being said, there's also multiple new builds, and I'm certainly not naming the lakes or naming the people, and I hope if you see that you're not offended, but there are multiple $1 million plus builds on, in my opinion, on smaller lakes that really are having a hard time supporting that price point. And I think a few people maybe got stuck as the market went kind of up and up and up, and they're building and things are going good, and then maybe they got caught on a few that were 1 to 1.234 million, on a lake that probably couldn't necessarily support that. I had a buyer that was super excited about one this spring, out of state. He was ready to write it sight unseen, and I had to have a conversation with him, and I had to say, yes, this is a quality build, but long term I would be leery about this price point on this lake. So we'll talk about that, and again, I'm going to throw in a few of my favorite ones that necessarily didn't make the top 15. Well, we're going to talk about the lakes. I want to answer this question because it is a huge question for most buyers, and we're going to do a flyover. I don't have a plan, but we'll do it with Google Earth, and we'll talk about, again, the top 15 to 20 lakes, and we'll talk about some in-betweens that I really love to give you some perspective if you're looking for a lake home in this area. And of course, depending on where you're seeing this video, like, subscribe, stay in touch. We're continuing to add a lot of more valuable content, and we'd obviously love to earn your trust if you're looking for a lake home in the area. So here we go. Okay, we are going to start where everybody knew we were going to start, which is Gull Lake. So Gull Lake is actually the second highest priced lake over the last few years in Minnesota. The only one that beats it is Minnetonka, and they had a sale on Minnetonka for over $60 million. So who's competing against that, right? So let's talk about Gull Lake a little bit. Over the last 15 or so years, we have just seen the prices on Gull Lake skyrocket. I want to say there's 4 this year that were in the $4 million range. Really, if you're going to buy on Gull Lake, you've almost, you want to get a nice place, you're really looking at 2 to 3.5. I had multiple buyers that were in that 1 to 1.5 range this year that wanted to buy on, we're out of state, just looking around, started on Gull, and I told them up front, you can't get a whole lot on Gull, even for 1.5, to 2. And they found that out and moved on to other lakes. So that's part of what we're seeing is people getting pushed off of the traditional, more well-known lakes onto some of these smaller lakes. But don't worry, we're going to cover about 20 lakes right now. And I tell you what, there's so many great options around here. The second highest priced place is Cross Lake in this area. And I always say, especially if you're VRBOing, you can stick a pin in Cross Lake and move out. I tell you what, Cross Lake is just such a hotbed for vacationers in the area for very obvious reasons. I will say when you get up around here, you can still kind of get some fixer-uppers and still technically be on the chain of 14 lakes. But no doubt Cross Lake, Rush, trout is phenomenal. Lower Whitefish Lake, this whole area, and I've seen some great sales and great rentals even on Little Pine Lake. Like really anything that's connected to Cross Lake is worth looking at. I did have some buyers around the $1 million range that were very discouraged after coming up from out of state 3-4 times and looking around Cross Lake. And if you're in the $1 million range or lower, you're really not going to find too much that is, not a fixer-upper, on the chain, especially if you're going to be right around in that area. Number 3 is Pelican Lake, and I love Pelican Lake. Obviously, with the history of Breezy Point, that's a big part of it, and that's going to be a reoccurring theme. Some of these lakes are where they're at because they've had, the last 100 years, they've had a resort there. So generation after generation, more people know about them and they want to buy, etc. And Pelican Lake is a great lake. A lot of these places, boy, you'd think you're in Florida, like white sand beaches. I love Pelican Lake, but a big part of the success of Pelican Lake is really Breezy Point. And we're really at around 800 to 1.6, over the last couple years there. The fourth one may surprise some people. It doesn't surprise me because I've been working on it for years. The 4th highest priced lake in the area is Bay Lake. Again, big part of it is Rutgers. Rutgers being there and so many people from out of state going to Rutgers for so long. Bay Lake, $750 for a fixer-upper to, $1.5 million for, a decent place. Really tough to get on Bay Lake because there's such a following there. Every time someone wants to sell, their neighbor has a, brother, sister, cousin, friend of the family that wants to buy. Bay Lake may be the single hardest lake to get on. I've got 3 buyers looking at Bay Lake right now, for over $1 million. And boy, I'd love to have some nice inventory on Bay Lake. No doubt, number 4, to a lot of people's surprise, is Bay Lake. The next 2 make sense because, again, as people think about Gull Lake being, second in the state, and you think about people getting pushed off to the lakes around there, number 5 is Round Lake. It's a nice lake, really $850 to $1.3 million, over the last couple years, really clear water. And I think another real key here is having that Nisswa address, right? Nisswa is just a hotbed for vacationing up here. A lot of people want to be around Nisswa. So being so close to Gull, being so close to Nisswa, that's really Round Lake's success, if you will. The next one is one of my favorites that I've done a lot of work on, which is North Long Lake. I like it because it's big. I feel like there's a lot of options on it. Pretty much whatever you're into, you're going to find on North Long. And I will tell you that it's definitely up and coming. We have a closing in 3 weeks on North Long for $2.7 million. And I will tell you that it is a just great lake, whether you're doing vacation rentals or whether you're buying on it. I think North Long is going to be, in my opinion, North Long is going to be a great investment over the next 5 to 10 years as people are getting pushed off, and I saw it with buyers this summer when we were looking at Gull Lake, and they're like, whoa, you can't hardly buy anything for $2 million on Gull Lake, but you can still buy a really pretty nice place for, 1.2 to 1.3 on North Long. And North Long, to me, is every bit the lake. Like, it's a great fishing, it's a big lake. So North Long comes in at number 6. Some of the sales have been around 500, but really 500 to $1 million on North Long. Now, Lake Hubert, this all makes sense when you think about it. You're getting pushed off on Gull, you're going up to Round, going to Lake Hubert. Lake Hubert comes in at number 7, really 750 to about $1 million. Some of these sales on Lake Hubert have been 1.2, 1.3 million. Great lake. We're going to take a jump now because of the size of it. Some people may be surprised because some people love it and some people don't. Number 8 is Mille Lacs. Now, Mille Lacs has a 100-year following for fishing. I've got 9 rentals on the west side of Mille Lacs. I'll tell you, people come from all over the country to fish Mille Lacs, and that's just the bottom line. It's also a straight shot up from 169, an hour and a half out of the cities. A lot of people from the cities like Mille Lacs because it's just that straight shot up. So Mille Lacs absolutely has its place. Some people say it's too big, it's too cold, it's wavy. Well, it's all, on the right day, it's almost like being on the ocean, right? It's a big lake. That being said, if you're doing short-term rental or thinking about it, Mille Lacs County requires you to be ADA compliant, so they've really slowed down the ability to do a short-term rental on Mille Lacs. And if someone wants to do a short-term rental, I'll normally bump them over to Crow Wing. Aiken, we've got a few up in Aiken, and the thing about Aiken is you've got to get a conditional use permit, so you're going up and quite frankly, the neighbors show up and you're arguing against the neighbors. I've never not got one. But if you're going to buy on Mille Lacs and you want to do a short-term rental, you've got to kind of keep those two in mind. But Mille Lacs is still bringing, really 350 to 1.2 million, depending on the property. I've had 4 sales on Mille Lacs, I think, in the last few months. 2 of them, both sales were in the 400s on the sell side and the buy side. So, I mean, you could still pick up a more modest, nice little cabin for in the 4s, on Mille Lacs right now. So that's a nice lake. Now we're going to jump over to Sylvan, and this is another example of having the following because you've got an historical resort, also being obviously just south of the Gull Lake chain. Sylvan comes in at number 9, supporting sales, some as high as $1 million, a little bit over, but around the 500s to $1 million on Sylvan Lake. Nice lake, no doubt about that. Now we're going to jump to Lake Edward. Lake Edward comes in at number 10, around 500 to 850 has been the sales around Lake Edward. I do want to mention 2 things here about this area, right? Upper and Lower Mission are nice lakes. I've had sales and I've managed property on Upper and Lower Mission, nice lakes. And in my opinion, anything in this area, particularly the Cullen chain, we like to fish on the Cullen chain. We like to fish out of kayaks, but Upper Cullen, Middle Cullen, Lower Cullen, these are nice lakes and a whole lot of sugar sand there. So I got to mention Mission Lake and got to mention the Cullen Lakes, even though they're smaller lakes that didn't make the list per se. The next 3 may surprise people because I've been surprised at how strong they've been over the years. The next 3 are down here, right? And in order, Lake Alexander, Fish Trap, and Chaminade. These lakes bring pretty much 400 to into the 800s, pushing $1 million. Lake Alexander, nicer lake, really a nice following, and quite frankly, some really nice homes on there. Fish Trap, Chaminade is popular because of the fishing. So these 3 lakes come in at 10, 11, and 12. All lakes to consider. If you're a little bit off the beaten path, great fishing lakes and really historically a pretty good following on those lakes as well. And now we're going to come to my backyard, South Long. So South Long Lake, Upper South Long Lake, I've had multiple rentals, sold, I want to say probably 10, 12, 13 properties, recently on these lakes. These are nice lakes, or family friendly, lakes. I wish they were connected. That's a big question people ask. They're not connected, but great fishing. Again, Upper South Long has a great little resort, a paradise resort there. And so these are some nice lakes too. Really bringing in around 350 to 800, for the most part on these lakes, but they are absolutely up and coming. And number 15 is really kind of 2 lakes connected, Sullivan and Platte. So I've got one on Platte right now for sale for $750. I think I might actually already have it sold. Doesn't surprise me. Platte and Sullivan are up and coming lakes. And when I moved down right to this area several years ago, closer to these lakes, and we started fishing on them, I'm like, whoo, these are really a hidden gem. Like, these are nice lakes, close to 2,700 acres, of lake. They're great lakes. They're up and coming because they're big, maybe a little bit off the beaten path, but they're, an hour and a half out of the cities. People are getting pushed off of the bigger lakes and they're buying on these smaller lakes. So Platte and Sullivan are nice lakes, and they've gotten popular. And that's not something that I'm, overjoyed about, because I live very close to them and I like to live the country where I'm living, but no doubt that they're up and coming lakes. And you know, I will mention they didn't quite make the list, but Camp Lake and Smith Lake are also two great lakes that I've worked on, and they are 15 and 16. So there are more lakes. As you know, there are a ton of lakes, but we've kind of gone through about the 20 of my top favorite. You know, I will mention the Bay Lake area, Farm Island Lake, yeah, and Clearwater Lake. We've seen sales, $1 million plus sales on those lakes too. And of course, Serpent Lake is another one that I just have to mention as far as a lake that you may want to consider. So I hope this is helpful. If you're out of state or you're not super familiar with the lakes in the area, it's important to understand this as you're looking, because quite frankly, you've got to make a decision, right? Do I want a nicer home on a more modest lake, or do I want a more modest home on a nicer lake? And I have had so many buyers that we've shown 10, 15, 20 properties, and they've had to learn that lesson through looking at properties, right? So because we specialize in obviously lake homes and we work with folks that are not in the area, you can call me anytime and I'll run out and we'll look at them. We'll do a live stream of them. We'll gather the information, do the background on them to see if it's worth it for you to drive out or fly in. So we are willing to work with you and do the videos and do a lot of the upfront analysis that some people aren't willing to do that legwork. We're willing to do that, and you'll never get an ounce of pressure from us. I always say I'm almost more comfortable once we've shown somebody 10, 15 properties, because then you have perspective rather than just making a deal on the first property that happens to catch your eye. But sometimes you get lucky and that happens. So again, this is Mike Fish from Minnesota Real Estate and Management. Depending on where you're seeing this, please go ahead and like the video or subscribe so you can stay in touch and reach out anytime. We would love to earn your business. Thank you.